My name is Paramita. I was born on Christmas Day in Calcutta, now which is called Kolkata in India. And my grandmother named me Mary, after Mother Mary. Although she wasn't Christian, she was very much Hindu, Vaishnav actually. But until her last day, she called me Mary. But my parents chose another name for me, which was given to me by my uncle. This is Paramita. And the Paramita, although is a Buddhist name, although he wasn't a Buddhist, he was an academic, and he chose the name for me, which means, Paramita means perfection in understanding and in compassion. Oh, the bar was raised so high for this little girl, and it still is. I mean, I don't think I can reach perfection, which is to attain Buddhahood. Buddhists have to, that is the ultimate goal for any Buddhist, to be perfect in understanding and in compassion. Well, I try, I fail, but I haven't given up. I'll keep trying. My cultural background, it's a very interesting question because, as I said, we grew up in secular India, where we learned to respect all religions, I was born in Hindu family, in very traditional, conservative Hindu family, where my grandmother's house, even today, there is a temple. So you can imagine how traditional family I come from. But interestingly, my parents chose a school for my sister and myself, which, they don't believe in idol worship. So I still wonder why they chose this school for us, but it's very interesting. And at school, we had religious educators. They would come and tell us stories about all religions, So that was very interesting. And after finishing my middle school, and I went to a Jewish girls' school in Calcutta, where I studied with Jewish girls and the Muslim girls as well. There were from all faiths, students, girls went to that school. And we were very respectful to each other. And after completing, I went also to a Protestant college. So you can see, Matthew, I grew up, in an environment where I had influence of all cultures, so many different cultures, and Christianity, Islam, Jewish, Hinduism, Buddhism. So that's who I am today.
Do you identify as Indian?
Absolutely. I mean, that's where I was born. That's where I grew up, It's a very strong influence. Like yesterday was Diwali. I was sitting down and I was thinking all the Diwalis I spent in India. And, my childhood memories, how on every Diwali, my father would do a feast for all the employees, and I would be serving the food to all people, sitting on the floor, enjoying a meal, It was a wonderful memory, and, just to revisit, those days. So I'm very much Indian, but I'm living in this country for last 20 years. More than 20 years, and I have embraced, and I'm very privileged, and I try to give back as much as possible to our society as well. We left India when we were just very young, and we traveled around the world. We went to Saudi Arabia and lived there, and then before the Gulf War, we moved. And then moved back to India briefly before moving to other places like Papua New Guinea, Canada. And also we were thinking Australia wasn't our first choice. I'm afraid Australia has a reputation, so it wasn't our first choice. But when we went to Canada, it was the first time. After a long time, it snowed in Vancouver. So I said, no, this is not my country. It's too cold for me. So at this time, my husband got a job in Darwin, Northern Territory, and we decided to move to Darwin for a brief time, very brief period. So we moved to Australia, and he was working with Royal Darwin Hospital, and I was very upset because I was working at an international school. I had a very good job there. I had to leave my job and I had to move to Australia, and I wasn't sure that I was going to get a job. And to my surprise, within the first week, I got 3 job interviews. And the first interview I went to, they said, you're not going to the next 2 interviews because we are the best. They discouraged me to go back to go and try in other interviews. Anyway, so when I started working and when our visa expired, almost close to, I went back to my employers, said, look, we had a wonderful time, it's time to go back, and we're planning to return. And they said, no, we are going to apply for your residency. And I'm very grateful that Catholic education in Northern Territory, they applied, and the principal also applied for for the residency of my entire family. And that's how my journey began here in Australia. My son decided to study at the ANU, and he moved to ANU. And we parents, we're the worst parents. Indian parents will follow our children everywhere. So we decided to move to Canberra. And there also I was very lucky to get employment very easily. And I started working there for 9 years with the Department of Education. So that's how we moved. But then my husband got another even better job here in South Australia. And so once he moved, slowly we all moved to South Australia. We Indians do our research very well before we make any decision. That is at least in my family. And when we came to South Australia, we were living in city centre, where the Hanmash Square. That's where we were living. And then the family started to grow. My son got married and we wanted a bigger place. And we were looking around everywhere to find a quiet, peaceful, and not too far away from the city. And then we found out a plot in Unley where we could build our little nest. And the other reason is it's not only close to the city, but also you can grow fruit trees in your backyard. That is so exciting, from a high-rise building to growing something in the vegetable gardens or roses or fruits. It was just a great attraction for us, and we decided to move to Unley. But now Unley is not only the area where we are living, we are so close to King William, the coffee shops, and it's the hub where you can go and enjoy and socialize. And Council Library is another attraction. There's such a great collection of books there. Yes, that's why I think Unley is a beautiful place. That's why.
And we asked you to choose a significant spot, and here we are sitting in Hayward Park, one of our iconic parks. Why did you choose Hayward Park?
It's so close to my home, 5 minutes walk. Not even 5 minutes, maybe 3 minutes walk. And look at the place, it's so beautiful. You can come here to meditate, to have a quiet time, to read. And I spend many days with my grandson here, playing and having some wonderful time. You can see the children are playing over here. Lots of times we spend. So when we came and we were invited to say barbecues, and we were asked to bring your meat, and your drinks, probably a chair. It was like just a cultural difference, An Indian will ask you to bring a plate or a meat. We found it very interesting, actually, the first time when we were invited, and that was something really funny. You're thinking the host is asking, but also we were keeping that in mind that in other places, you don't always have people doing your cooking. People are very busy in developed countries, and that's why probably. But we found it very amusing. I have here my grandfather's diary. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to meet my grandfather because my grandfather passed away before I was born. So this is very treasured. I was visiting India and I found this diary at home, and I asked everyone if I could have it, and I want to keep it. And this is I wanted to know more about my grandfather, and this is the way I could know more about him, because I found another book when I was very young in my grandfather's library. That was an annotated golden treasury. And every poem he had writings, Sometimes he analyzed, sometimes he just found out the meanings and wrote down. The annotation was in every page. Unfortunately, because of moth or something, my mother made me, part with that book, and I was very sad. Unfortunately, those days we didn't have the technology to keep, a digital copy. I wish we had, but I'm planning to do this digitally. Record the entire diary. This was his last diary, and his last entry was in June, month of June, when he passed away. And he was very systematic, very organized. Every night he made entries, and he was an entrepreneur, and he talked about his problems, what he was experiencing, the challenges. And I think they're, quite similar what I'm going through currently while I'm going, taking this entrepreneurial journey at the moment. And this inspires me that, my grandfather didn't give up. I mean, health-wise, he passed away because he was above 80, and he was so persistent. He was still trying, and then it happened that he died. But not in any entry I found that there was anything about giving up. Always trying his best. And also the other interesting thing I found that the first entry was 1st of January, and he knew that it was coming closer. His final days are not very far. And this is the beginning of the diary. It says, "Since I have realized that earthly wealth is of little consequence, I invoke the kindness of the Almighty to favor me with the dust of his feet, so that I may acquire spiritual wealth." So this is so important for me, that he wasn't doing his work only for the material wealth, but he was thinking of more than that. He was thinking of spiritual wealth, and he was very giving, and he was very compassionate. He supported so many families, so many relatives. So he's an inspiration, and I want our next generation to know about him. cultures actually give us the identity, who we are, our roots. Just last week, I was interviewed by UNSW, the young students from there, because the talk was about intergenerational migration. And while teaching, because I've taught tertiary, I've taught secondary, primary, I see the children, the young men and women also, they have such a problem with their acceptance of their origin. And our conversation began like that. They are confused. They don't know which one to follow, because the parents would like them to become Australians, and at the same time they're very protective of them. They want them to follow, practice the rituals, but at the same time, so they don't know which path to take. So the conversation went like, you have to know your own culture, and at the same time, the people around you, what culture they're bringing here. We want it to be a heterogeneous culturally, because from each culture we can learn so much. And if we say that I'm superior to others, that's not the way we can share cultures. We have to be respectful, and we have to learn, from each other. When I teach in the classroom, I try to learn from all the cultures, and I try to convey this to my students, how important culture is, because there isn't any culture which is superior to others, and we have to be respectful, we have to learn, and we have to share.
So on a personal level, do you feel you belong in
Yes.
Australia?
Yes, if I don't, this was another thing that I've been asked, that do you feel outsider? And I say I don't feel outsider. The reason is, after living in a place for 20 years or more, and after contributing to the society, if I think I'm an outsider, then there must be some problem with me. If anyone thinks that I'm an outsider, the problem is with that person, not with me. I feel very much part of Australian community of Australia. We live in a gated community in Unley. We have 11 families, around. I'm not sure, 11 houses maybe 8 families. There are Chinese, Indians, Greek, Caucasian, local Australians, and so many. And we call our little community like a village. So we visit each other, and like if there was an emergency, we always there to help each other. And this is the wonderful part, and when I said that if ever we move out, and then the other person said, no, we don't want anyone to move out from this community. So it's a wonderful feeling to be part of such community where everyone cares for each other, Why I think Australia is a great country, I'll tell you, there are lots of things I can talk about. I can support India in Australia. I can sit with other people, those who are cheering for Australia. I can support India. And I love doing that. And I'm so proud that I'm able to do that. And think about when we were having conversation, we have many students from around the world. And there was a question, who are you supporting tonight? By my students in India, because this is a virtual school. They asked lots of questions. And before I could answer the question, one of the little girls, answered, let the best team win tonight. The little girl thought that I would be offended if I said that India should win. And then I explained that I can support anyone I want in Australia. I can. My most important lesson I have learned, that is doing studies, research, literature review, they're not enough. We have to act. The school I currently run, that is the Virtual School Australia, we call it Empathy School. We want children to learn to take actions, because in current time, if you think the grades and marks and, in 21st century, we need to teach children to take actions. It is so important globally, around environmental actions, actions to make a difference in the real world. That is so very important. That's why I love to make films, because we have many stories, minority stories, they're never shared. So I think the most important lesson I have learned, and I like to practice as well, that is, we have to do something to make Unley a beautiful community, where it is intercultural, we are respecting each other's culture, and making a vibrant community which can be exemplary for rest of the world. And it is only possible when we all take part in it, when we are not sitting behind, sitting and waiting for someone else to take the action, when everyone is involved and we are trying to make a change, So I believe that action is very important. It's not only the plan you do, yearly plan or next 5 years plan. We have to have actions.